From George Floyd, Emmett Till, Breonna Taylor, and to all the other names been featured on the news. The conversations of police brutality, equality, dignity, and respect is still going on, but much louder and much bolder. But there's still a lot of more work to do. For the month of February, Canada honors Black History Month. We can name millions of Black Canadians who live a greater impact in our country, like Viola Desmond, musician Julie Black, the legacy impact of Africville, National Hockey League's first Black Canadian hockey player for Boston Bruins named William O'Ree, and the reinvention comeback of Hogan's Alley near the Georgia Viaduct Bridge near Chinatown and downtown Vancouver. Canada stands strong and free for our Black community. Their stories absolutely does matter to us. All united as one, we can build a better future. But there's one thing we need to keep in mind. There's another group for the Black community that isn't heard enough from. Another group known as Black Disabled Lives. Here are many reasons and examples why Black disabled lives does matter. What do we mean by Black disabled lives? Black people living with physical, developmental, and intellectual disabilities. We have Black disabled people living with autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, bipolar disorder, physical and facial attributes, dyslexia, and all other kinds of disabilities intellectually, developmentally, and physically. Here are some stories on what's happening from the Black disabled community. Not only this happens in America, this racial bias can also quietly exist here in Canada as well. Most of the time, there has been an increasing amount of disabled Black students, and Black non-disabled students receive harsher punishments. This example is a concrete idea of implicit biases. Why is this example of implicit bias? Black disabled people were ignorantly being categorized into these generalized stereotypes reinforced by people and social media. The most common stereotypes that Black disabled people believe that they're insulting are they are lazy, can't get a job or can't go to school because they're poorly educated, they talk too loud, and they're overweight and obese. And they have an expecting reputation for being too loud and act very violent and aggressive. These stereotypes are not true, and it really hurts the Black community and the Black disabled community. Black disabled students are punished daily and more harshly because of those examples of negative and ignorant stereotypes that most people began to internalize them. Another barrier that most Black disabled people face is classism. What is classism? Here's an example to you what classism is like. Meet Chris and Abdul. Here are their stories and observe them very, very carefully. Christopher had a natural talent of leadership in business. He also lived in the downtown Vancouver area near an apartment right in Robson Street. He's 26 years old and from his high school years and university. He's also a straight A student and he's always on top of his game. He saw a job at an electronic company store for a sales associate manager, where the post office used to be in. He went on to apply for that job. Abdul came from Congo and moved to Canada in 2016 to have a better life. His only family member had left is his grandmother Emma, who had been taking care of him ever since both his parents passed away from an accident. Luckily, 3 years later, 1 week before Christmas, Abdul and Emma became Canadian citizens and got their Canadian citizenship official certificate. Abdul and his grandma's affordable home they could only live in is right near historic Chinatown in the downtown East Side neighborhood. Abdul's having a difficult time finding a job in Canada because not only he couldn't meet the requirements in other jobs, Abdul also faced ableism and discrimination because he was born a physically disabled person. But however though, Abdul has an incredible knack of leadership, and even though he has a disability, he still kept pushing forward and he's always been kind to people no matter how bad the circumstances can be. And he is a big helper and has a really big heart. He really likes to help others. Coincidentally, on back to school day, Abdul found a job as a sales associate manager at a computer store the same one right close by the post office used to be in. He sent his application and hoped he could get the job too. This is what happened to Abdul's interview with the job interviewer. Okay, Abdul, I really appreciate you telling me ahead of time that you can't afford decent clothing for your interview. But I need to let you know ahead of time that work clothes matter and no more excuses. Not bad, your resume. I see you have a bit of some experience working with people. But the question is, can you prove to me you can work? None of them matches with our requirements, but you seem like a very honest man. Okay, Abdul, here's what's gonna happen. Tomorrow, there's a test I need you to perform. It's about your interaction with people and how to communicate. Tomorrow, you can come back at 7:30 in the morning in this office, and I'll be giving you a glimpse of what's work to expect. Here's what happened to Chris's interview as his results. Chris, you just blown me away. Not by your amazing looks and how young and handsome you are. Sorry to bring that up, but your resume is impressive, and I'm very proud to say you've just been hired. Your first day of work is going to be on September 30th. Thank you, Chris, for coming here, and very pleasant to meet you. Have you noticed something very odd or very strange? Maybe if we continue on, here's what happened. As Emily, Chris's and Abdul's supervisor, provided Abdul a test to complete, she asked him just to continue chatting and making along your progress all the way. Keep the guests happy and make sure to keep on checking the stocking supplies for all the computer parts. Abdul kept doing his task. So far, so good. Nothing happened so far except he's just doing his job, while going around helping alongside with accessible equipment known as Abdul's wheelchair. Emily was impressed with Abdul's skills and drawn out some notes for herself to keep in mind. On Chris's point of view, for some very strange reason, Chris, without taking the test, is allowed to be hired on the first day of his job. Emily observed how Chris worked. Similar to Abdul, he just greeted guests, being friendly and courteous, and making sure all the guests at the computer store are all happy. Emily wrote some notes on Chris's work performance, some interesting notes that Chris wasn't allowed to see. If you're wondering why Abdul had to take the test and Chris, you're actually on the right track. You may understand why. In the moment of truth, Emily called Abdul about if he got the job. Abdul picked up the phone and had a chance to talk to Emily. Emily said that she is impressed with his commitment and how hardworking he is. There was a task, however, that he made a mistake with. It's one where he's supposed to organize the files in alphabetical order, to their last names and first names. Abdul didn't ace his training, and he didn't get hired. Now let me ask you, are you sure you found something very fishy about this situation? Well, here's what you didn't know. Emily seemed a very nice supervisor, right? But are you aware her behavior is a concrete example of implicit discrimination or classism? Do you disagree? Check this out very carefully. Detecting implicit discrimination and classism can be very tricky to detect because this kind of behavior has been normalized. Here are some examples that you may or may not catch. Emily strangely had asked Abdul to take a training test to see if he's good for the computer job, but not to Chris. To make it more fair, it should be both Chris and Abdul to take the test fairly for the sales manager position. The tone of Emily's voice. When she's around with Chris, she's more enthusiastic and more polite and very friendly to him. But when she's around with Abdul, she seems less interested in him. He bored her. Emily gave Chris the freebie on getting the sales manager job than Abdul. Emily looked down more on Abdul. Oh, and shockingly too, on behind the scenes of Emily's office, the way on how she marks people wasn't very fair and square. Emily had a reputation of hiring the most smartest, good looking, and well educated workers only. Emily had a reputation of only hiring white workers than minority workers. She had a whole list of minority workers who were also very talented and smart. Applications too. But all the applications were put into the garbage chute. Surprisingly, Abdul aced all his training tests very well, but Emily wasn't being honest with him. Emily, the supervisor, treated Chris and Abdul very differently because of the way how both of them looked and what she preferred. For Chris's side, he dressed up very professionally and looked like a supermodel and seemed very well educated. Emily treated him with dignity, respectfully, and very enthusiastic. And when she heard Chris came from downtown Vancouver, Robson Street, she hired him without questioning. Because Abdul is struggling to find a job and has limited amount of money, he didn't had a casual job interview clothing with him, but he apologized to Emily ahead of time and explained why he didn't have the right kind of clothes and would like to make time for it. Regardless of his struggling in speaking English, he still had a decent amount of skills like drawing, being respectful, friendly, and compassionate to people. Abdul is a very hardworking man, and he's very humble. Abdul may have a physical disability, but his leadership was extraordinary and was overlooked. He could even draw, and he is a very open and honest man. When Emily found out Abdul came from downtown East Side, it may given her the impression that he was poor, and she doesn't care or buy his kindness and humbleness. She even thought Abdul is worthless and not good enough, when she became instantly bored of him. Emily's attitude of classism came from the perspective of how people look from the outside instead of knowing them in person or what values them the most. Black disabled people deals with classism, and classism can come in many forms. Individual classism, a behavior or attitude that may be unconscious or intentional. Institutional classism, an intentional or unintentional classism comes in other institutions within or society, like workplace, housing, healthcare, or any other places in business. Cultural classism. Cultural classism refers to the promotion of negative beliefs or practices that portray poor, less educated, or socially unaccepted individuals as inferior. And finally, internalized classism. This type of classism is the acceptance of classism by working class and poor people. They may feel inferior towards those in a higher class position or shame about traditional social standing in. There are millions of black disabled stories that isn't fair for them to go through so much hardship in life. Here are some of their stories from the black disability community. One of their stories is from a black autistic boy living in Sweden named Emmanuel. Emmanuel's sister and mother, Becky and Jeanette, are the ones who are advocating for Emmanuel's needs and support. This is their announcement been said in the public about sharing Emmanuel's story and why it matters not only to him, but also sharing to the autism community. This is a message written by Becky, Emmanuel's mother, who started a petition for Emmanuel at change.org. I am reaching out to the autism community and parents of autistic children on this platform to help spread awareness on the story of Emmanuel, the young autistic adult with intellectual disability, locked up in institution indefinitely for having a meltdown at a mall when asked to leave during closing hours. Since he's been institutionalized, he's been experimented on, abused, and heavily medicated in the name of curing his autism, as if he is a guinea pig. His family has been banned from visiting him, and they have taken all parental rights off from them using the Swedish law just because they documented the abuse and humiliation he was facing. They were purposely drawing a clown face and shaving his head before visitations, and the guards would laugh, tormenting them when they visit him. For over 3 years, he has not seen any member of his family. The last time he saw his family was on the 25th of December 2020. He was only recently given access to call his family when he was moved into another institution. They have said the only way out is if he can prove he has outgrown his autism. From telling his story, a lot of autistic individuals and some parents have shared their stories with me from around the world, which breaks my heart. This isn't just about Emmanuel. He is only one in a million of the autistic individuals around the world this is happening to. People of color and black individuals are mostly targeted. The discrimination around disabilities has to stop. If you want to follow his story, my family have created on social media platforms under the handle My Autism Journey in Sweden, either like on TikTok, Instagram, or on Facebook, where my family has been documenting all what he is going through. Any help, awareness, or commitment you can provide in terms of covering his story and upcoming peaceful protest on your platform will be highly appreciated. Thank you.
A GoFundMe page has been created on behalf of Emmanuel Phil, the autistic adult who was sentenced indefinitely in a psychiatric ward for having a meltdown in a public place. The reason why his sister has created the GoFundMe is to help with legal fees and also things like counseling, therapy for when he eventually gets out of there. We've realized that getting a solicitor, getting a private solicitor would be the best way to go. From all our research and from all the work we've been doing behind the scenes, and we are urging the general public to please donate, share. Even if you can't donate, sharing his story, sharing this post, reposting, liking, saving will go a long way, so that more people can know more about his story, and hopefully it will get to people who are willing to, who are able to donate, or are interested or invested in his story. And if you're also new here, if you'd like to know more about his story, I've got an highlight on Emmanuel's story. You can also follow his account, which has also been tagged here.
Justice for Emmanuel.
Justice for Emmanuel.
Justice for Emmanuel. Justice for Emmanuel.
Justice for Emmanuel.
Justice for Emmanuel. Justice for Emmanuel.
Justice for Emmanuel.
Justice for Emmanuel.
Justice for Emmanuel.
Justice for Emmanuel.
Justice for Emmanuel.
Justice for Emmanuel.
Justice for Emmanuel.
Justice for Emmanuel.
Justice for Emmanuel.
Justice for Emmanuel.
Justice for Emmanuel.
Justice for Emmanuel. Justice for Emmanuel.
Justice for Emmanuel.
Justice for Emmanuel.
Justice for Emmanuel.
Really appreciate that you're standing up for Emmanuel, and not only for Emmanuel, I always say for other autistic people too, other people with other related disability, especially from migrant background, brown people, because it's not easy. The journey has been a long one for me. They're constantly sentencing me. You don't even speak up. It's difficult. It's difficult. So you guys, you're amazing. I mean, you are amazing. I really appreciate. I just pray that I don't wish anybody to go through that. It's not only for Emmanuel, for other people. Yeah, I know that Emmanuel, it is what it is, but there are thousands of other parents who have contacted me, and their own children who have been taken and they have been sentenced to, and they're told that they need to stop being autistic, they need to change, they are medicating them, and they don't know where to start or where to end. So I really appreciate. I hope that Emmanuel gets justice, and all the other children too in Emmanuel's situation should get justice. And I really say, I wish you guys the best. Thank you guys so much. Remain blessed with your family. Thank you. Thank you.
Like my mom, she has said a lot of literally everything. I really want to say thank you for everybody that came out. Like we said, we're still going to come back here because I know that Swedish people are in there. As somebody that has lived in Sweden, I can testify to you, these people are inside there. And that's the main reason why we did not protest in Sweden. Because in Sweden, when you want to protest against their system, the thing they do is that they lock themselves inside their offices and pretend as if they are not seeing what is happening. I remember the first protest, the first time when my mom and myself, we spoke up. What did they do? They did the same thing that they are doing today in the Swedish embassy. They locked themselves inside their offices. They called the police. My mom and myself were judged as criminals. My mom was asked to pay a fine of 10,000 Swedish crowns. I was asked to pay a fine of 3,000 Swedish crowns. So I will tell you one thing about Swedish people. They love to lock themselves in their offices and pretend as if they don't know what they're doing. And that is why we are out here advocating, because it's not just Emmanuel that is in this predicament. There are plenty of other people, black people, people of color, immigrants that are like Emmanuel, that have disabilities, that are locked up in Swedish institutions. And if their families dare to speak up, what happens to them is that the Swedish government will say is police send its entire system to go and attack these families. That is why nobody is picking up, and people choose to be quiet, because they do not want to be asked to pay a fine. They do not want to be judged as criminals in the system in Sweden. So guys, we are not only speaking up for Emmanuel, but we're speaking up for more other people that are also being locked up, that deserve to get justice. Nobody with a disability is supposed to be locked up as a criminal. Nobody with a disability is supposed to be judged as a criminal. There's a difference between somebody being a criminal and somebody with a disability. These are two completely different human beings. You cannot take somebody's disability or use somebody's disability, or because somebody has a disability, you make them seem like they're criminals. Nobody chooses to have their disability. When we talk of a criminal, we talk of somebody with a choice. Nobody wants to be disabled. Nobody wishes to see their loved ones being disabled. Disabled people don't enjoy being disabled, but that's who they are. So we cannot be punishing them for who they are. And the fact that we have been in the Swedish embassy today and nobody from their office can come out to talk, this is a clear example to show that how did these people end up as a super humanitarian country? Let the European Union tell us, what kind of super humanitarian country is there where people come to your embassy complaining that their rights have been violated, and all of you sit in that embassy quietly? Nobody dares to come out and speak. So when do the Swedish people practice their humanity? When do they stand up for injustice? When do they come out and speak as humanitarians? So these guys have never been humanitarians. They were just given that title by the UN, by the European Union, to cover their abuse. Because we have been here for the past 4 hours. We were here from 10 a.m. in the morning till now, that is 2 p.m. and not one single person from the Swedish embassy has come out to talk to us, or even dared to ask that, why are we standing in front of their embassy? What is happening? So when do the Swedish people practice their humanity? Let's ask the European Union. Let's ask the UN. When do these guys practice their so-called super humanitarianism that they claim that they have? Because these guys have never been humanitarians. They just use that as a camouflage to cover the abuse that is going on in their system. And that is why we say this. We are not going to stop speaking up about Emmanuel. We'll keep sharing Emmanuel's story. We'll keep documenting Emmanuel's story. We'll keep talking, and we'll still come back again. If they want to keep hiding inside their offices and pretending not to see it, we'll keep documenting it. It's high time the world needs to know the truth about Sweden. The world needs to know what is going on in that part of the world. It's high time the world knows the truth about Sweden. So thank you guys for everybody that came out to advocate for Emmanuel. Thank you all for all your support, for everybody that has supported Emmanuel, whether on the live videos, for sharing, for participating, for those that have come physically. My family is very grateful. We are very grateful for your support. Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Justice for Emmanuel! 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 Justice for Emmanuel!
So, why Black disabled lives also matters to us and to everyone around this world? They teach us the important values of respect, kindness, compassion, dignity, and equality. And they should never be forgotten. How you can be a friend and ally to the Black disabled community? Keep listening actively to people with disabilities, especially from the Black community. It's better to ask questions than to assume, but be mindful of your words. Treat them with respect like a regular person. Never assume a person needs help. The best way to approach is, if you see a person who's struggling, ask them first, and if they're okay with it, you can help them, but only if they're comfortable with it. Disability is a whole spectrum, but never forget those living with severe disabilities. We see lots of people with mild disabilities succeed and have better lives. But what about those with severe disabilities who need 24/7 support, who can't find a job or cannot work? Do they also matter to our world and our society? We shall never forget those who are struggling and those who are on the severe spectrum of disability. Their story should be told more often. It's okay to make mistakes. but remember to acknowledge them and always move forward. Be mindful of your privilege. Privilege can come in many forms, and it's important to share more Black disabled voices coming from them and not from us. To all Black disabled people, we see you, we hear you, and you matter to us. We love you. Thanks, everyone, and take care and stay safe.